So this last half hour of the day is just to simply raise comments or questions. I had a chance to sit in on a few of your discussions and hear what you're wrestling with. Some of you have bosses to go back to and report to and try to communicate what it is that you learned here. Sometimes that's a sensitive communication, so you're trying to figure out exactly how to say it in a way that will be received in that setting. So I had a good time with our Nigerian team that's here. I know that the people from the Philippines are looking at curriculum challenges and trying to figure out how to get something like Discipleship Essentials into some language issues there, or print the material at a cost that can be affordable. So that's another issue that was going on. So what are there things that bubbling up in your settings there that would be helpful for us to talk about as a group, even problem solve as a group? You know, sometimes you're saying, I've got this issue, what's the wisdom of the group? I certainly am not the complete fountain of wisdom, that's for sure. So, what should we chat about?
I think when you mentioned the first domino being very important.
Todd did, yeah.
When you
Sometimes it's hard to know what it's on. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, when you mentioned the first domino, that's what we were all scrambling first in our group is who would be the first key people.
Okay, good.
And in Brazilian culture, and actually even in Mozambique and Portugal, was kind of the same idea of 3 to 6 months the group gets started, but already empowering them to maybe of the group, the quad, 2 of them starting and birthing a new group, and that group keeping together all the way through, but allowing them to start new groups, not at the end of the book, but within a 3 to 6 months period.
Absolutely. There is a concept in the small group ministry in terms of kind of a fast start on the groups. We use the language in small group ministry called turbo groups. And this is kind of a form of that, meaning how do we kind of speed up the process so we can get some things launched so you're not waiting so long. And there's probably enough experience that you can have in 3 to 6 months to get a feel for the quality and climate of what you're trying to accomplish so that somebody could be sent off, especially if they're still rooted in that mother group, in a sense, the original group. So I think that's a great concept. So... And that's another thing we could talk about here. What insights have you received, or what ideas do you have that you are playing around with, that you're experimenting with, that you would want to share with the rest of us? So, good thought, Philip. What else? Benny?
We were talking in our group, and this idea came about this morning. So we have a person that starts leading a group into discipleship essentials. And by doing that, they grow spiritually indeed, but also we think, have to grow on a deeper level more than just leading, because they're probably going to have 5, 6, 7, 10 groups, and they're going to do the same material. For their personal growth, how do you recommend to work with that, or like a level 2 discipleship or some other kind of studies to be done together for the ones leading their groups?
So you're concerned about an ongoing nourishment of that person, or going deeper, and there's kind of in a sort of...
As they lead a group,
yeah,
they also need deeper growing for their personal spiritual life, because they are getting used to that material, which is good for teaching purposes, but not deepening maybe in their spiritual walk.
Well, I would say something like Discipleship Essentials can work on two levels at the same time. One is as you are preparing for leading your group, I tell people to use it as kind of devotional material as well. So how are you going to go about preparing for your weekly meeting? Well, take 20 to 30 minutes a day to work through Discipleship Essentials. Don't just treat it as something you're preparing to meet with for your group. You're preparing it for yourself, and in addition to the time that you're going to be discussing it in your group. So it can be to go back to the Wayne Cordero idea of hungry, feed yourself. So that can be a self-feeding kind of tool that's there. There's there's all kinds of ways to deepen the feeding from whether it's reading materials that are solid reading materials. There's a lot of emphasis today in the United States on discipleship, and David Platt's written book called Radical, or
Counterculture.
Yeah, Counterculture. So there's Materials Multiply, Francis Chan's content. So there's those kind of readings. There's the deeper readings, like one of my favorite books for nurturing the Spirit is John Piper's book, Desiring God. That's a rich study. And if you want somebody to stretch more, both intellectually, stretch your mind and your heart, there's very few books that feed your mind and your heart. And that's one of the ones, And then, of course, your own study of Scripture in that fashion as well. So I think the soaping material helps you take you through ways to nurture yourself, growing in various types of prayer. Is there? You might expand the triad concept as you identify leaders. One of the ways to continue to nurture those leaders is have the leaders get together periodically in a triad and support each other, and begin to share with each other what's happening in their groups. So then they become, in a sense, coaching one another as well in that way. So there's some thoughts. Maybe others have thoughts to give to Benny as well in terms of how we nurture somebody's heart and spirit and mind, even as they are engaged in the discipleship process. Any others have some suggestions? Yes.
I think as we lead in a group, we need to feed ourselves first too.
Right.
Prepare ourselves, but just because you're leading somebody doesn't mean you already all completed. You're going to continue going to church, feeding yourself, to Bible studies, reading the Bible, and there's so many ways that you can get equipped yourself and be strong in the faith by praying, by seeking the face of God, and also reading your word,
Sure.
There's no way that teacher is going to give you everything. We're going to lead people, so we're going to have to teach them also that they will have to also feed themselves from the word of God and the book, the discipleship essentials. It has a lot of material in it. It has so much that you can research from that.
Right.
So it's so much that we can learn as we leading.
Right.
You get more intense on that.
And you're reminding me of one of the features of Discipleship Essentials. If you turn to the end of each chapter, there's a section called what? Going deeper. For those who want to go beyond what might be considered surface, there's a going deeper suggestion as well. So,
Hello. Yes.
Ten low.
Yes. So I'm thankful because we have a very good discussion with my wife, Mr. Vang and Mr. Kam, in Vietnam situation. So a lot of things we hope to do. But first I will create 2 small groups. One, and my wife create one. So it is so many people in my mind now, but maybe I need pray hard
Right.
to choose loyalty and teachable man.
Yeah.
and maybe we come around 10 person. And secondly, many people want to join. Of course, when I open, many people want to join. So I want to go and finish and create the leadership. Help me to do in the future. So please pray for me. Thirdly, in Vietnam, all things they call pastor. But now I learned one thing is I have to be a disciple. I sit down to learn with them. That's what I learned.
Right.
So very big challenge. Dr. Red challenged me, but I will do.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would think, Tenlo, you as a pastor in a hierarchical setting, I don't know if this is, and we've talked about this a little bit, as you invest in a few, find three, let's say, men that you're going to be giving yourself to, will that create a problem in your church? Will that be okay for you to do that? That's okay? They weren't going to look at it and say, well, why are you focusing in on those few? That's good. One suggestion is, and I know when I may have mentioned this already, I forgot what stories I've told, but when I went to the church in Chicago and we were trying to begin the disciple-making movement there and change the culture, it was been a very programmatic church, and we're trying to shift it to be a relational congregation. And so I wanted to, strategically select the first 3 men that I was going to invest in. Arrived in October. I didn't start my first group until April of the next year. And that was simply to kind of pray and think and sort out and make sure that I started with the right people. And I decided to go with our 3 members of our board of trustees. Did I mention this story or not? I don't think I did. So the board of trustees had an image in the congregation as being the wealthy people in the church. They handled the finances, the property. They were acted as kind of the personnel committee in the congregation. But they were not seen as the spiritual people in the church. In fact, there was I don't know if you'll catch this joke or not, but the joke was, what's the difference between a trustee and an elder? And the answer was about $250,000 a year. So they were seen as the wealthy people in the church. And so I heard that joke. But as I got to know the trustees, I found that the image of them was incorrect. That was an old image of just the wealthy men who were running the church. So if we were going to change the culture, it was going to be important to get those men engaged. So I selected three of the men from the board of trustees. And it was one of the most powerful, wonderful experiences I had at the church. One of the men said, I've been so involved in the program life of the church that I'm starved spiritually. He was aware that his soul was starved. I was doing the business of the church without really being engaged in the nurturing spiritual side of it. And so a couple others that got together. And it was one of the most honest groups that I had. I'll tell this story because the 4 of us got together and we decided we were going to go all in on terms of this honesty thing, especially when it came to some of the chinks in our armor, some of the besetting sins that we had, and we wanted to share those with each other. Now, that was kind of a dangerous thing for me to do because, remember, the members of the Board of Trustees are the personnel committee. They are the ones that hire the pastors and fire the pastors. I was one of the pastors. And I was going to be honest with these people that, could potentially, and I shared some, fairly delicate things, let's put it that way, with this group. But I also said to them, now remember, I got stuff on you too, so, but it was a real open time. But it was a strategic selection as I looked at that, because we wanted to change the culture. We wanted these leaders to be the ones leading the change in the culture of the church. And so it was very important as a strategic choice to find those people who could replicate who would be leaders in the church. Just because somebody's in a leadership position does not necessarily mean that they are spiritual leaders in the church. These men happen to be that. So it's not necessarily one and the same that occurs. Okay, blessings on you and your work as you go back.
Deci cred că Beni va vorbi în locul meu din nou.
Ziceți.
Deci cred că Beni a spus ceva de genul când vor apărea următoarele 24
He's commenting about what I said, and he says, I think his question was, when are the next 24 lessons going to come out?
next, next 24 lessons are going to come out.
Ceea ce eu vreau să spun, ceea ce voi face, undeva la lecția 7-a, voi aduce la grup, voi da celor din grup
One thing I am thinking about,
sugestia să aducă pe cineva din afară să asiste la întâlnirea.
around lesson number 7, I want to ask the people I'm meeting with, the men I'm meeting with already, he started this,
În ideea de
to
a pune în ei dorința
bring
de a face
someone
parte dintr-un grup.
to bring someone else, talk with someone and bring them so they can be a part of one of these groups.
Okay.
Deci asta aș adăuga.
Mean expanding the size of the group?
Să extindeți grupul
Doar să privească.
so they can just watch and get a glimpse and an experience of it.
Okay.
Ca în mintea
Well.
celor care vor privi, ei să devidă următorii oameni din grup.
Yeah.
So the next time I start the group, they already have a glimpse and they know how it is.
Yeah, if the people will grant permission for that to happen.
Dacă cei cu care vă întâlniți deja vă dau permisie,
I would first of all make sure that the members agree to that.
trebuie să-și dea
You're in a covenant together. You do not have the right to decide that just yourself.
nu decideți numai dumneavoastră.
You understand what I'm saying?
Le voi propune asta.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask them.
Okay, good. And it could affect the climate of that group for that time.
Poate afecta întâlnirea atunci când o să vină persoanele respective.
O să fie o întâlnire în care nu lucrurile cele mai intime vor fi
Yeah,
spuse.
not the most intimate things
Yeah,
will be told.
okay. But, as long as your group is understanding exactly what you're trying to do, they would be agreeable to that
Dacă înțelege grupul și sunt de acord, e ok.
so that you could have others peer in and get a sense of what this group's all about. Yeah. Different ways to be exposed. And so, yeah, you've experienced that here. You've been with groups where you've been, in a sense, the outsider looking in. Good. Anything else for the day? Amma?
There are people who, no matter what you do, they don't like putting pen on paper. They will give you their verbal commitment, but sign something like a covenant, not for me. So what do you do with such people? Do you drop them or go ahead with them? They'll tell you, I'm with you, but I won't sign.
What does signing a commitment mean to them? Why would they be resistant to that?
Well, maybe they don't fully understand.
They don't fully understand what signing a commitment is,
Yes.
but they're willing to verbally say, I'll do it, but
I'll
they
do
will
it.
not be willing to put something
Yes.
on paper.
Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
cultural thing, the background of people. There's this fear about just signing a covenant or something like
Okay.
a document.
Can you help? Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you. What I would say is that it depends. It will depend with your context. If the people would get committed to the work without signing, because you have been with them, you know their culture, the diverse cultures, then I do not see why you should bring in a new thing. If they follow you and for sure they have worked with you without appending their signatures anywhere, I think it is good just to leave it like that and walk with them.
The point of the covenant is not the signing ceremony. The point of the covenant is that there's a mutual understanding of what you're committing yourself to. So, may not be, that important that somebody actually puts their signature on it. But it is important that you as a group talk through what it is the commitment is, and that you are verbalizing your commitment to each other and to that covenant. Okay? So, the signing is not the issue. The issue. The commitment is the issue, and the knowing what you're committing yourself to is the issue. Okay? Alex? Alex, you're put on the spot here.
Yes, I see that. I was hoping actually she will voice the question for me, but there's no way I can avoid that.
Okay.
I was approaching them, Bev and Claudia, and asking if they experienced ladies coming to a group, and then within the group they'll start to either, say bad things about their husbands, and this is an issue with some of the pastors stopping the ladies to meet on that ground. So what is your experience? What feedback can you give?
I have not been in a ladies group, I can't tell you.
But you've been a pastor.
I've been a pastor. I've not found that to be an issue in this setting, in this culture. I'm not aware of that's...
So that means that they need to answer this question.
Yeah, right.
They gave me some answers.
Yeah. I am not aware that that's an issue in terms of taking that time to sort of run down their husbands or say bad things about their husbands or the pastors. Is it you were saying specifically about the pastors? Just the husbands. Okay. I just haven't dealt with that. So.
How would you address it if your men with their wives?
Say that again?
How would you address it if the guys in your group started bad-mouthing their wives?
Oh, well... There's a difference between bad-mouthing and sharing some concerns about relationship. If the ultimate issue and desire is to improve the relationship, and yet you're sharing some rough spots in that relationship, that's fine. If it becomes a complaint session about your spouses, then I would definitely say, listen, we're not here to do that. We're here to ultimately improve our relationships with our wives and take our responsibility. Because we talk about our spouses in our group, but it's all from the standpoint of how can we be better husbands to our wives. Yes, there's issues there, and so if I'm part of the problem, how do I become part of the solution to that and love our wives? Because there are behaviors for both husband and wife that either one of us would say we're not terribly pleased with, right? I've been married 45 years, and it seems like the longer I'm married, the more individual we become in some ways. That there are things I do that I know irk my wife, and then things that she does that I know irk me, and yet I don't go to my small group to complain about that. I go to there and say, what can I do to be able to be more of a minister to my wife? And I think that's the tone we want in that circumstance. Yes?
A couple of my groups, I have seen total healing in marriages because of what we were doing in this discipleship group. And we haven't got them all healed yet, but... There has been more than one that have come together. Their wives are so happy that they are in this group. And even if they are not in a group themselves, they have seen the tremendous difference in their marriage and their family and their relationship with the kids.
Because, Dave, you said a certain tone of how to discuss these matters? Is that why do you think that's happened in that group?
Yeah, there's a little bit of control that has to go on there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
You can't let it run away. But I think the other men in the group will also come right alongside of you because they may all be at different stages. And God just seems to intervene. I mean, it's a process of changing the heart and changing your commitment to the Lord. And within doing that, it brings the husband and wife and the kids closer together. There's no question about it.
Amen. Just a second. One of the questions actually that came out of our group along this line that we all thought of, but I thought of it as well, and that was, I went back and I asked my wife the question, when do you feel most loved by me? And that was a good question to ask her. One, because I got a nice immediate response, which was genuine, all the time. Well, wow, that's nice. But then she actually revealed when those special moments were as well. And that was, it wasn't necessarily new information that she was giving me, but it was a wonderful question to ask her, about in that relationship. Philip, you got a comment?
Talking about when wives talk too much or husbands talk too much about intimacy in the family or something that's happening. Very typical in Latin culture, very expressive, very, let's say, bubbling. The tone of the voice is very loud. We're always laughing about something, normally somebody else, but we don't like anybody laughing at us. One thing is to bring back the covenant. So the facilitator of the group, that's what I would suggest. If the one wife will end up talking too much in a privacy that could be hindering the husband, and the friends may lose that confidence and share outside, is that the facilitator will bring back, remember, we're all learning in a journey together, and this probably is taking a chip of weight off of your shoulders. You've never had an opportunity maybe to share, but let's all remember our covenant. Let's go back to that. Let's open the page. Let's just read it once again. We have agreed together that we're not going to be taking this out of the context.
Okay, right. Yeah, now all those confidences have to stay within that setting. Very good. Yes, Basil.
Greg, I noticed that the triads and the quads are gender specific.
Yes.
And in a context where, for instance, I'm going back home and being the only male who's been here, at what point and how did you or would you include women into the process? Because I'd need to start with men for the whole thing.
Right.
And then they're still men anyway, so how do we get the women involved without having them to come out here to a conference like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine you probably are aware of some women in your network of ministry that could be very effective at leading these kinds of groups, right? So to maybe sit down with 2 or 3 of them and share some of the things that you have discovered here and the value of that, and see if they would like to know more about all this. I think we're filming all this, right? So part of the reason for creating the teaching context is so that you might be able to use it in your setting and share some of these thoughts with say, the ladies in your church that you think would be very effective, this kind of thing. I think I maybe mentioned and certainly tell this story in Transforming Discipleship. When I first started my first excitement about this kind of triad multiplication, I was in a church in West Los Angeles in the mid-'80s, and I had begun working with the men, and the women said to me, "What about us?" And that's ultimately when I actually invited 2 women to join me together in a group just to try to experience the dynamic of it. We went through a good portion of the process, and then set them free to start leading groups. A little awkward, I confess, in terms of that situation, because I had a woman about 10 years, my senior, one about 10 years, my junior, and that was in this group with me. But it was in part to experience the dynamic of it so that they could go off and lead their own groups. So that was just a way to get it started in that situation. That may not be appropriate in your situation to do that. Then it may mean just sharing the concepts with 2 or 3 women, watching some of the training, and then setting them free to go off. Maybe others have some wisdom along those lines that beyond what I've just shared. Okay. Shall we call it for today?